Hello, Government 2305 summer students. Thought I'd give us a quick video over the long essay one assignment coming up. I can't emphasize to you enough to start working on this and thinking about it. And then long essay two will follow a similar structure, so I may not post a video for that one. But because we don't have a whole lot of time for back and forth questions on the assignment, I thought posting this might help head some of those off. And I'll be basically going from questions I've had in previous semesters about this assignment. So the first part of this assignment is you need to define what is a unitary form of government and a confederal structure. And we've experienced a couple of these in America, and these different types are existent throughout the world. So the first thing you need to do is find out what does it mean to be confederal. An example of a current confederal system would be the European Union, where the individual countries retain quite a bit of sovereignty. However, they agree to come together for the sake of some shared, in their case, an economy mostly, practices. And that opens up borders and things of the sort. You may have heard things like Brexit and things like this, where sometimes people don't like to be a part of that arrangement. America's first government was a confederal government. We had the Articles of Confederation until 1789, when it was replaced by the Constitution. And under the Confederation, individual states pretty much carried on all the daily activities, and for the most part we had this thing called a country, where we had some things like an army, one common currency, things of that sort. However, states still did a lot of their own things in regards to militias. Some even still coined their own money. Under the Constitution, once people joined, and a criticism people have today is the states have had less influence over its citizens' lives, and it's become much more nationalistic. And this you've seen manifest out in policies that we usually will say, like the Supreme Court will have a decision that will affect everyone nationwide. So recent examples have been same-sex marriage is guaranteed to all citizens of the United States, as well as the right to keep personal handguns. That was challenged recently, and we've incorporated that right to all citizens throughout the states. And so it's not always left and right, but these issues, and so is it an American right? Maybe not your right as a Texan, but your right as an American. Texas has yet to take off the books its ban on same-sex marriage, but it's no longer law because the supremacy clause of the Constitution. So since Texas is in this club, if you will, called the United States, it's agreed that it will abide by the rulings of that. And so these issues still face us today, but that's what we have, a federal system. And in case you're wondering, are you allowed to leave the club? We had a whole thing called the Civil War, which says no, you're not allowed to leave the club. So you will be an American, although you can still be a Texan, and states do have some rights. The biggest ones are typically education is run by the states. Most criminal law is still done by the state, so you may see discrepancies now about marijuana legalization. Some states have gone through recreational, or many more have medicinal use of marijuana. Texas doesn't engage in either of those. There are some limited cases of medical marijuana, but for the most part, it's not ubiquitous. And so those things are still left up to the states to decide. However, those things still have heavy federal influence. Cannabis is still illegal in this country, and one could be arrested in Colorado for possessing marijuana if a federal agent took it upon themselves to arrest them. They just will not be arrested by local authorities. So, and then schools, we have lots of instances of federal funding that compels schools to go along with a national agenda, even though they don't have to. But usually the money's so much that they feel like it's in their best interest to do it. And so you guys were witness to this, assuming you're a traditional student, when we passed No Child Left Behind, which put a heavy emphasis on testing under the George W. Bush's administration, which the residual effects of that are still with us, and that supplied federal funding for students to test, or for us to test students at the districts and to comply. Recent efforts have been the national 4x4 standard through K through 12, things of that nature. So these things are oftentimes met with some resistance, but the states do have the right to forego participating in those, but they will also forego the money. Another example that might be a little more relevant to many of y'all's age group is 21 to drink laws. States can make laws to drink a drinking age whatever they like. However, if they go less than 21, they lose 10% of their federal highway funding. And so sometimes people call this coercion, right? That highway funding money is so big that you really have no choice to forego it. But others would argue you could forego it if you like, if you were that adamant about making the drinking age 18, 19, or what have you. But they're compelled in many cases to go along, even if they rather not go along. This is also reared up recently with healthcare, especially when it regards to Medicare and Medicaid, which is oftentimes a matching situation. Texas chose not to participate in the Medicaid expansion. Most economists will tell you that was pretty silly on Texas's part. We left a lot of money on the table, and in the end, we saw to pay for all these poor people who got sick. We just didn't get any federal money. And if you really want to look at the double whammy, we pay about 10% of all the money that goes into the system. So not only do we have to pay for our own sick people, but we also help pay for the sick people of every state who participated. And so I guess you could say we could rest on our ethics on that, but depending on what kind of person you are, a pragmatic person might say that, well, it's happening anyway, let's not leave literally billions of dollars out there that could just easily be ours, without much more of an obligation to poor people medical spending than we're compelled to through our system of county hospitals and things of the sort. But sometimes we fail to express that, and in Texas, it's hip to hate Democratic presidents, I guess. So regardless of your own opinion on that kind of ideological politics, I would invite you as a person in the future in politics to really think about, should the ideology get in the way of what's best for Texas? And if you could argue what's best for Texas, probably having more of its money back in Texas. And just, by all means, go voting candidates to change law, but in the meantime, take advantage of the laws that exist, which we have failed to do in regards to what is widely known as Obamacare, if you will. So anyway, back to the paper, just to give you a brief outline of American government and how we got here. Back to the paper, define those two types of government, and then just imagine what it would look like if we went back to a confederal system, or if we're better off with a unitary system, maybe where states don't really matter at all. And you maybe could argue that we're almost there, but there are quite a few differences in what state you live in. I think where the rubber hits the road, that's really apparent. But some European countries, especially smaller ones, can go with the unitary system, and sometimes that makes sense. If your country is only 6-7 million people, is it worth dividing up into a bunch of smaller sections than that, and things of that nature? Some do. Belgium's one. Theirs is much more complicated than our system to understand, and there's only, I don't even know if there's 10 million of them. I'll leave that up to you to look at, but it's not 20 million, I know that. They recognize different languages and all these things, which you imagine is possible in Europe, where languages are every few hundred miles. There's another culture and language. But you define those two things and then give me your, based off your evidence, what you think would be the outcomes if America adopted a confederal unitary form of government, and point out some criticisms. Now, you need to use scholarly journals. These are peer-reviewed, and you can get them through Blinn's library website. And when I say articles or scholarly journal, What that is those things have been scrutinized by other professionals in the field. In our case, you say political science, but you can find articles from other groups that aren't political scientists. But these will typically have names like journal in the title, or like Political Science Association or something like that, or review. These are usually key words, but in your search, which you have from the resources tab, you can usually find a radio button that says peer reviewed. And so, one, you're only going to get articles that highlight peer reviewed journals that you have access to through Blinn Library. You can utilize Google Scholar, which is a fine source. However, most of those articles aren't free, and they're not cheap. And so I would say exhaust your Blinn account, and just as a general advice to your future academic career, as you have friends who go to other universities and things like this, I always kept those people in contact with them, because as you move on, whatever field you choose, you'll be doing much more research. And it was nice that I had friends, at Texas Tech, when I was at West Texas A&M, that gave me access to their library resources, because the libraries, they subscribe to different journals. And so you may find that yours is pretty good, but it's missing a couple. So you go through Texas Tech, Texas A&M, Houston, where we got a friend at Yale, use theirs. You might get access to more of those journals without having to pay for them. So I know I'm getting a little long-winded here, but also don't get to talk to you. So just try to sneak in a little poli-sci besides writing today. So as you explain those things, give us your preference and define it. And rule of thumb I use is a scholarly journal for every 250 words. And it's not a big quote, just where did you find this information? Now, you don't only have to use scholarly journals. Those mean more to me from a factual standpoint. But if you're just, maybe in there you do want to tell me what the population of Belgium is, well, that's not going to be a scholarly journal. You're going to go to the CIA World Factbook, and just say it's 11.8 million people, whatever it is, and then you'll just cite the CIA World Factbook, which is not a scholarly journal, but that's accurate information. And if I take umbrage with it, I can go look at it myself. But that when it's just factoids, other sources like even newspapers are fine. But to actually rest your premise on something, a peer-reviewed journal carries much more weight with it. So get used to that language, regardless of what field you go into. That's important for you to know. Take the time to write this paper. If you can, go to the Writing Center. You have fully staffed people with master's degrees in English who have nothing better to do but help you succeed. So use them. They're free, and they're waiting for you. Do not wait for the day before. So if you go utilize them, I'll give you an extra 5 points on the paper if you use them in advance. So they'll give you something, or just let me know, and we'll figure that out. But that's in the instructions as well. Take a look at the rubric, and make sure you hit all these points. And I think you'll find this paper isn't overly difficult. And now I'm thinking about it, so I don't have to commit to the second paper. Because a lot of that stuff's the same on scholarly journals. Let's just review that one a little bit. Let me pull it up so I get the right language here. On this one, you're going to look at demographics, and this is for long essay 2. And demographics means what does it look like? So so you have racial demographics. What are the racial demographics of Texas? What percent white, Latino, Asian, what have you? That would be the racial demographics of the state. You could also say percentage male and female. It's probably close to 50-50. You could look at religious demographics. And so I haven't updated because I don't know the new Supreme Court justice, but for a while there, our Supreme Court was 3 Jewish people and 5 Catholics. And so one argument, I don't know what the new guy is, Gorsuch. I'll look that up and update my stats. But so one might say, okay, you have 3 Jews and 5 Catholics, so that makeup is that'd be 63% Catholic and 37% Jew, where the country is 2% Jewish, maybe 25 to 30% Catholic, and the majority is Protestant. And so you'd say, hey, is this a little out of line with the makeup of the country? Is this representative with the country when no Protestants are represented on the court? And so what would that mean? Should that be something, a point of emphasis? You